All right, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Ms. Blankenship, can we get a roll call?
Of course. Councilmember Jenkins? Here. Councilmember Robbins?
Here.
Councilmember Horgan?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Roberts?
Here.
Mayor Bass?
Here.
All present.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and move into closed session.
Thank you. Good morning. We're offering the interpretation in Spanish during this meeting. If you wish to hear the interpretation, please click the interpretation button at the bottom right of your Zoom screen. You will see a glove icon. If you're joining via the Zoom smartphone app, please select your language by clicking More, M-O-R-E, or the three little dots in the bottom right corner of your screen. Select Language Interpretation, then choose English and click Done. If you wish to hear only the interpreters and not the original speaker, be sure to click Mute Original Audio. I'll repeat these instructions in Spanish. Thank you for your patience. Estamos ofreciendo interpretación en vivo y en directo durante esta reunión. Si desea escuchar la interpretación en español, por favor presione el botón Interpretation o Interpretación que está en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla Zoom. Usted verá un icono del globo mundial. Si está uniéndose a través de la aplicación Zoom para los teléfonos, select su idioma presionando en More, M-O-R-E o más, o en los tres puntos que usted va a ver en la esquina inferior derecha de la pantalla. Seleccione Language Interpretation o interpretación del idioma y luego elige Spanish o español y presione donde dice listo. Si desea escuchar solo a los intérpretes y no a los oradores originales, asegúrese de presionar Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Thank you. Back to you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. All right, with that, Mr. Stroud, do we have a closed session report?
Mr. Mayor, we had one item on closed session this morning.
Your
Mic went off, sorry. We had one item on closed session this morning, public employment appointment, and the title was city manager, and there is no reportable action.
Great, thank you. With that, we're going to go ahead and move into new business. Our first item is City Council Protocols Update. Ms. Blankenship.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. So this item was requested to come forward a couple of months ago, and we had to postpone it a couple of times. Really, the City Council protocols are the rules in which you want to rule yourselves and will agree to follow yourselves. So this is an opportunity for you to make any edits or changes on how you would like to govern yourselves during meetings, and also a way to let the public know how they may get items on the agenda or request proclamations or council member travel, things like that. So if there's any edits you would like to make, I'd be happy to note those down. If it's something simple, I can just make those, but we can definitely bring it back if there's larger edits that you would like for adoption.
Great, thank you. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and any questions of staff or before we come back for discussion? Any questions from anybody on protocols?
When was the last major update to the protocols made? I know we had some minor revisions not long ago, but I know the ethics one was like 92, which is a really long, but when was the last major revision?
Protocols are updated every year. We generally will, if there's any government code changes that apply to like the Brown Act, we would bring forward those changes automatically for adoption. We do that usually annually because we know those changes are coming. We do one-off little changes. When we did the key to the city, we added that, but it hasn't had like a major overhaul in the time that I've been city clerk, just usually additions.
January
for
13th, 2026.
Yeah.
No, I know it's the last update. I was just wondering if there's been a major overhaul.
No, because we keep
Not too
updating
long
it
ago.
every
So
year.
just a lot of little minor ones.
keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah, we bring it forward every year, so.
The big overhaul was getting rid of Robert's Rules of Order and more American rules to operate a city government. That was-
I have a couple questions. In regards to the repetitious or dilatory comments prohibited, just because I'm newer on council, is there an example of this that it has happened recently or happened that?
What section was that? What number?
It is number 8, section A. A speaker shall not present the same or substantially same items or arguments to the council repeatedly or be repetitious or dilatory in presenting their oral comments. If a matter has been presented orally before council, whether the council has taken action or determined to take no action, the same or substantially same matter may not be presented orally by the same person any further. I'm just asking if this council has enforced this or identified that this is a concern.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and I'd ask Ms. Stroud actually about that, because we can't stop public comment.
That's
People-
why I'm wondering.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, this item, I think, is more advisory to the public, and I know even at the last meeting, I think, Mayor, you asked people not to repeat others' comments and just say me too, or ditto. And
Right.
that's fine, but if it comes down to it, people have a right to have their 3 minutes, and you can't tell them they can't say
And we
something that
brought,
someone
we
else
brought
just
that
said.
same comment up repeatedly during a lot of the VHR stuff.
Yeah,
Just
and I
I
feel like
requested them
Should
to,
it say prohibited or does it say discouraged?
my question is, it actually, you're both answering it and not answering it, is in one meeting, or as I read it, if you were coming to multiple meetings and sharing the same public comment or communication.
but you can do that under the Brown Act, so we can't override state law. State law allows
So
them
that's
to
why I don't
publicly-
know, okay,
That-
so
that's
that's
why
for
it's
discussion,
advisory.
because I don't know, okay, it's
That's what-
advisory to the public,
Well-
that's fair.
It doesn't read as advisory, it reads as or says
As
prohibited.
authority, it
Right,
reads
so
with
maybe
authority.
that's something that we note and come back
Okay.
for
Yeah.
deliberations, because
The other
we should
question I
probably get
had,
ours aligned with state law, and then say recommended where we want to go beyond state law, and it's not something we're allowed to enforce, but we'd like to request.
Sure.
that was a question, so for discussion. The other question I had was, the Granicus has the 5-minute timer for council member speaking. Have we used it in the past? Is it something that we can use?
It is not something that we have ever used in my 10 years
Okay.
on working with city council. Of course, I'm happy to use the timer, but then that would be, say, one council member speaks for their 5 minutes, and then other people speak, and then they want to speak again. Do we say no?
Again, that's for
Yeah,
discussion. I just
yeah.
wonder if it's something that can be activated. We could decide how we manage it, but it is something that can be activated if we desire.
Right, and then I would also say if a council member used 2 minutes and they still said, I have a minute and 45 seconds left, I would go back and like to have my minute 45 seconds. How strict are we going to be on that? Because I could see that could be a logistical nightmare for me.
That was just questions.
And there's the
Yep.
ejection seat. There's where the mayor has the ejection
Can you
seat.
speak into the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, there is the ejection seat where they rig your seat up, and if you speak, the mayor pushes it and you're ejected.
Bond car style, I like
But using the timer would be, using the timer for
So-
council members would be easy.
Great. Any other questions before we go to public comment on protocols? Seeing none, great. We will go ahead and open this item for public comment for anybody here in the room that would like to give public comment on the protocols. Mr. Gregorich.
Good morning, David Gregorich, South Lake Tahoe. I've been coming to most of your meetings for the past 8 years. I figure there must be a few things I can bring to you. One thing is, in my 42 years in state government and 8 years here, on various meetings, discussion generally expands or contracts in inverse proportion to the length of the agenda or time allowed. And this council recently has not been doing a good job of efficiently running through meetings, finishing night meetings before 10 o'clock. that's of concern to me. Couple things on that. When I was 13 years old in speech class, they gave us the Carnegie system. Tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them. I think sometimes council is doing too much of that. You can be more concise in your discussion items, not kind of going through things 3 times. Hit it once and move on. We have, I think, a lot of discussion during question time. I think we have a lot of discussion during the open public comment that, I think it provides for briefly respond to questions raised. It shouldn't rise to a rebuttal or a support that chills the purpose of the open public comment. So anyway, try to limit that. The Monty Python definition, argument is a series of statements in support of a proposition. If you're getting to a series of statements, it's not a brief response. That's started to be a rebuttal or a support. And then just to end, I was a soccer referee for 26 years. It's a profession where you start at 50% right and it goes down from there. Being elected council people, you catch a lot of flack, a lot of strays. I just want to say I appreciate, I respect, that you guys have put yourselves, in this position, that you take it seriously, and appreciate your work on our behalf. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gregich. Anybody else here in the room that would like to give public comment? Seeing none, we'll check on Zoom.
Yeah, we do have one hand raised. Oops. Oh. Maybe I can have someone in the control room. Please unlock Miss O'Hare so that she's able to give public comment. I'm unable to allow her to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Miss O'Hare. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. In part, I just have a few comments on some of the sections, which I hope are helpful. I think the council needs to address the decorum. I think it in part is what's leading to the very long meetings. So I have just a couple of suggestions. On page 1, under section 1.2, where it says chair, the mayor shall chair and preside over the meetings. It speaks to that the mayor can remove any person from the meeting for disorderly conduct. And I think there needs to be some discussion with the police chief as to how that would be processed, or it needs to be laid out in the policy. There are some penal code sections that apply, but I think people need to be prepared with a protocol of how that's going to happen and who's going to do that. Also in that section, it speaks to the mayor pro tem serving if the mayor is absent, but I think you need another section for if both the mayor and the mayor pro tem are absent and you still have a quorum, who serves as the mayor in that situation. On page 3, under electronic devices, I know there have been complaints made about council members using texting during meetings. I think that needs to be modernized a little bit to add either watches or other means to that section. There is a protocol for what should be done if that is in fact happening, and so I think there needs to be some discussion on that. On the rules of conduct, which is under section 2, public title, I think that it needs to include using the titles of staff. So that section talks about using the addressing the public with Ms., Mr. Formal titles, I think you need to add staff. I often hear people refer to police officers as cops. Having been one, that's historically a negative slang term. Really, the title is police officer, lieutenant, police chief, fire chief, and I think they need to be given the respect of the title. So I think you should expand that section. Under public comment, in other meetings, I've seen people line up to speak. It's a little more orderly. It goes a little quicker. That might help move the meeting along. I often hear the public swearing at the council members or directing comments at them. The rules state they can't not do that. Is there a possible remedy? Can it be muted? There's a large section on the violation of the Brown Act censure procedure. And I think you could take that censure procedure and move it over to the ethics policy. It's pretty clear and it's well-written. It's come from something else, but I think that would apply to the ethics policy. Last, I want to say, I think the city clerk has done an excellent job. In other cities, the issues are really lack of notice,
All right,
lack of detail.
I'm sorry, Ms. O'Hare, you've been given your 3 minutes. Thank you so
Okay,
much
thank
for
you.
for your thoughts. If you want to submit anything else in writing, please do. Thank you very much. And there's no additional hands raised at this time.
Great. All right. We'll go ahead and bring it back to council for discussion. Who would like to start it off?
I can start it off. Just appreciate the comments by Ms. O'Hare. I think we should direct staff to have to add to section 2 about who serves if both are absent. That was an omission that I didn't notice, and I think I appreciate her comment on that.
I've seen that happen
We have-
twice in 4 years.
And we just,
It
the
should be in
mayor
the protocol,
generally,
though, shouldn't it?
the mayor generally just appoints it, or when the mayor and mayor pro tem have to recuse, the same thing can happen. Like if there's an item that we have to recuse, and then we'll appoint whoever's gonna run the meeting.
If something were to happen and both by emergency you weren't able to be here, who would make that designation?
Then the council selects someone to.
By vote.
Should that
Use your
be
microphone
outlined
for
in
discussions.
the protocol?
Yeah, we could, I guess.
Sorry,
Wouldn't hurt.
we can't hear you.
Yeah, I don't know, I'd ask, yeah, we could.
If both are add a section that says if both the mayor and mayor pro tem are absent without the ability to designate a
council by majority
temporary
would
mayor pro
designate.
tem, then the quorum remaining council shall vote to designate a meeting chair to add
I guess the
acting mayor pro
question to
tem for
Ms.
that
Stroud is
agenda.
whether that is something that should be explicit, or since you all knew that was how it goes. Is it?
I think,
Well, I think that's
this,
the logical way to do it. I think maybe the mayor one time selected someone to run an item when we knew both were going to be absent, and I think another time it happened by surprise, and so we had to have the 3 council members remaining choose somebody to run the meeting. I think either way is fine. I don't know. I guess I would ask council, you may want to focus on what you're trying to solve with these changes, and, big picture. What are you trying to achieve by amending the protocols?
Right, I think that, I agree, the logical way kind of is the way that we're gonna move when it happens, and you know what I'm saying, like
So it doesn't need to be
think
explicitly
so.
stated? Okay.
yeah.
My primary concern for the agenda item overall is the meeting pacing that we've been having over the last 6 months in particular, has been notably poor, or almost year and six, the last year really has been notably poor compared to my first 2 years on council, where we were able to process through quite a few more agenda items per meeting than we have in the last, year and a half, particularly in the last 6 months. My view on that from which comes only from this seat and nowhere else, is that the majority of that, it comes from the amount of time spent on the VHR agenda items. And in particular, the number of times we revisited that topic, which was absurdly high. Like we had over a dozen meetings with VHRs on the agenda. And then almost every single one of those was almost a 3-hour item with a solid hour and a half at least of public comments, some of them running 2 hours. And the public comments on those items were the same comments over and over again for 2 hours. It was unproductive. And after the first time you hear the same comment 3 times, it becomes uninformative. And so other municipalities in the country, I can't speak to the Brown Act in California in particular, but other municipalities in the nation handle this by having a limit on total public comment time per agenda item, right? Not just a total per speaker, but a total per agenda item in aggregate. And then typically what they do is they say, we will split that time between sort of the yay and the nay, sides, each get 30 minutes or whatever it is. And that's a way to get a handle on a lot of the repetitive comments. And so that goes to the section that you pointed out, where we have a section that says
It even
that we are
says,
prohibiting that, but I'm unclear how that jives, like you said, with the Brown Act.
it says nothing in the foregoing precludes submission of comments to the city in writing.
Oh, for sure.
Which is why
I
I
have no-
think at some point, do you ask for those comments to be in writing?
The thing is, there's been a lot of, and Ms. Stroud could speak to it, but the courts have strengthened the public's Brown Act access, right? I mean, that's been pretty, it's been pretty determined through the courts that we have to give the public the right and opportunity to speak.
Yeah, I would be concerned if we're limiting total public comment to like 30 minutes per supporting people and 30 minutes per opposing people, that there, if there's a lot of people here, they might get 30 seconds each or something too short. The courts have upheld, like, if there's a lot of interest in an item, limiting to, 2 minutes or even 1 minute per speaker, but I wouldn't want to limit it based on whether they're opposed or not, because it might.
Can we limit just totality and forget the position aspect of it? That the line up in order, and the rate at which you skedaddle to the line is your order.
I would be
so we're not
concerned about
engaging
that.
we're not engaging in viewpoint allocation of time by viewpoint in any way. But we limit the total public comment time on an agenda item. Everybody gets 3 minutes, but the total amount of time is 40 minutes or whatever it is.
Yeah, I'd be concerned about that, because if we run out of time and there's people left that haven't had a chance to speak, the Brown Act says that you have to give the public an opportunity to speak on an item before you vote on it. And if there's 10 people sitting there that haven't been able to speak because the time was up, that would be a problem.
The problem, though, is that doesn't
We can
that
bring
leave-
it from 3 minutes to 2 minutes per person, but every person has to have the opportunity to speak. And we've never done that really, because I feel strongly like the public has showed up here, we want to give them their time to speak. But you're right, when we've had these VHR issues and it's the same thing over and over and over again.
It's not productive.
Yeah, but I think that, as Ms. Stroud said, we can go from 3 minutes to 2 minutes, but I think you have to have like a very good reason. There needs to be 30 to 40 people to where you're like, look, there's 30 people here, we're gonna be here for an hour, so we're moving it.
What's the rule?
2 minutes
What's
instead of
the
3.
contextual environment that we have on calling an audible, as it were, and reducing individual speaker time from 3 minutes down to 2 minutes when it appears that there's a very large contingent?
The mayor has the ability to do that and has done that in the past. I would say very rarely, because usually when that happens, it's a very controversial item when we have a lot of people here to speak, and then it is a controversial decision to limit their time to speak as well.
True.
So that's kind of how it plays out.
I mean, I've been on that side of the lectern, I don't know how many times, and frankly, I usually keep my comments when I do that, to 2 minutes. I write them to 2 minutes, just because if you take up a full 3 minutes, that's actually a really long time.
Can
And
we,
people tend to zone out on that.
can we just, if we're going to talk about length of comments, can we also turn that back on ourselves? And I think it is true that the length of time in the meeting does have to do with the length of public communications and the amount of comments on each agenda item. But I think, as I asked the city clerk earlier about whether or not we could also use maybe just some visual reminders of how much time we are using, the language that exists says this procedure is not meant to limit debate or cut comments short, but rather assist council members in their efforts to communicate concisely. I think that with that being the goal, I think adding the 5-minute timer on our screen here, so not to cut us off, but to give us guidance as to how long we have been speaking on an item, to be respectful for the community. I like to reflect what I ask other people to do. And if I'm asking people to keep their comments to 3 minutes, or maybe on a hot topic, 2 minutes, then I'd like to be as respectful of their time. So that is something that I would propose.
I see where we're going with this. The only challenge is very rarely have I seen members of city council talk in one continuous step for that length of time. That's actually really rare. You might have questions that go back and forth for a longer time if there's interrogation with staff or whatever. But in terms of monologuing, that, you know, and I'm one of the talkier people, but I don't think I've ever gone that long.
I think it's about, we have the questions portion, and that is somewhere, as it was pointed out by our public speaker, that we definitely lean way out of questions and into discussion. And I think what it is that, yes, you want to have questions that are good for the public, but hopefully a lot of your questions have been answered before you get to the meeting, right, with staff, and you're able to get through that. And hopefully the message and discussion that you've delivered has been thought out. And a lot of times it's the public doesn't need to know all of your train of thought of how you've gotten to a decision. Deliver the decision that you're going to make and maybe explain the reason for your vote and move on. I think that's kind of where the public is looking at us going, man, you guys are not getting this done in an efficient way, is because we do all have, that role where we go on for too long. And I think we have to recognize that. And maybe sometimes what can be good is go back and watch a meeting, go back and watch yourself. And it's one way to see that, like, okay, wow, I am taking quite a bit of time to explain something that maybe doesn't need to all the way be explained. So I would just say go back, and I think it's a good thing to go back and watch the meeting and watch yourself. And one of the attachments that was on here, which I think is really cool, which is from the League of California Cities, and it's just talking about maintaining control and decorum during council meetings. And the first part of it is setting the foundation of good governance and teamwork. And really what it talks about is respect among colleagues, respect for the public, respect for our roles, and respect for the process. And I think one of the things that we have also found ourselves challenged with is that level of common respect and decency between each other, but also to our staff, especially, but to the public. I was not here for one of the meetings, but there was some definite issues, and we've got to not, it can be really difficult when the public comes up here and has such bad things to say about us. And I will do a better job at pointing out that, look, you're not, as a public speaker, they should never be pointing to one individual council member, and I can stop them in public comment and will focus on that, but we really should not be responding from the dais. It just feeds negative energy, and again, it's not really respect. I know it feels bad because they're disrespecting us a lot of times, but if we can do our best to just not feed the energy, basically, I think it really can help
Be
us.
the role models, exactly.
That's it.
And on that topic, though, right, we've had members of the public be objectively disruptful in recent meetings, and they were never ejected from, like, and I think at some point, if that kind of behavior isn't demonstrated as unacceptable and to meet with the consequences as specified in our rule book, if that doesn't happen, then it's just going to encourage further behavior of that kind. So when people are shouting and screaming and being disruptive from the gallery, we have a process in place, and I believe, if I understand correctly, it's the mayor's discretion to say you have to be ejected from the room and not let back in. You can watch the meeting on the monitor, but you're not coming back in. And we actually have to say, will our police chief or our senior law enforcement representative please escort the member of the public out of the gallery for being disruptive.
Is there a protocol as
So,
Ms.
Mr. Mayor, just to respond to that, the Brown Act was revised sometime in the last couple years to address that, and there's a specific provision in the Brown Act now for removing people from council meetings. So the process is to call a recess, we'll give them a warning, call a recess, and then if they come back in and the behavior is still happening, then you can work with the police chief to have them ejected. And that's the process we followed. We have not had to eject anybody because after a warning, people shape up generally.
I have given the warnings. I think we know there's a few of the same characters, I'd say, that are doing this, and we have given the warning, but we haven't gotten to the point for the recess. But yes, that is
But
it can happen.
Can I
and-
ask a question then along that? Because it's not just outbursts. What I've heard from people in the gallery is that there is a lot of discussion happening that is disruptive to the members of the gallery hearing our conversations or the conversations that are being led by staff or by the public. It seems like an obvious thing to, stop a meeting, eject somebody according to that protocol if they're being that disruptive. But how do we manage just general low-level disruptions that are impacting the experience of people in our gallery? And as I understand from people I've spoken to, they choose not to come because there's too much discussion and noise from the gallery that disrupts their ability to hear what we're doing and what we're going on.
I think one way is to address it in the beginning of the meeting, just to make a statement, as we've started to do that more, but we can add that to the statement, right? Like, you should not be, if you need to talk to somebody, you've got to go outside. We have a lobby that is there, and that's what that's for. Please do not be having discussions here in the chambers as we're trying
It
to do
goes
the
back
business.
to asking the public to reflect our own behavior. We're trying not to interrupt each other. I think we're fairly good at that. And I think they should also be observing that.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that a statement is one way, and then if it doesn't stop, well, then we've got to, the other thing is to go and talk individually. I can do that as the mayor, or if you know somebody that is doing that, just to have a reasonable talk with them and see if you can,
I do think we need, and we talked about this, but I do think we need sort of a firmer explanation of decorum rules about how, outbursts will actually not be tolerated and, not being like, please, 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 like, if this continues, we will recess and evict people from the room, and we're not messing around. A little bit more parenting and a little less, a little less gentle parenting, I think, at
I think
times.
you need a button that says that. Just a button and it
It sounds paternalistic, and I understand that, right? But but we've had people come here and act like children, and I don't, and that's just a reality of engaging with the public sometimes.
Definitely. And I mean, again, it's somewhat of the same characters, and a lot of times it seems like they get worked up and then they end up leaving the room and somewhat calm down, and then they come back. And so there's a certain point of how much do you want to feed the fire is how I look at some of those situations. But again, if it is at a point that it doesn't stop, our last few meetings, we haven't had the issue. So maybe we're getting to a place. But anyways, I agree that we can definitely be more forceful. But again, I also, it is the public's business, and they do have the right to be here. That's for sure. But they don't have the right to disrupt. I completely agree.
I think not only do they have the right to be here, but we want them there. We need them here. We're
Yes.
talking now about managing the public, and yes, there's a couple individuals that are a problem, and we need to do a better job at managing them. But that is not what's taken us till midnight on our night meetings. I thought there was, at the last Cal Cities meetings in Long Beach, I think Scott, David, and Joe and I went to. I don't think you were at that last one. I heard at several of the seminars there that one of the biggest challenges for council members, and especially the new ones, is that they never stop campaigning. They have the job, they need to just start making decisions instead of speaking to the public about who they are and what they believe and all that. So I think there's still a lot of that going on within our council, where we're explaining ourselves, as you said, more than we need to. Make the decision, make your point. If there's questions, those questions will come from us, and that's where we can cut a lot of these conversations short. Additionally, if we, I talked to Ryan Carter, who's a council member down in Placerville, and I asked him one of his meetings, how was your last meeting? He says, oh yeah, it was 1 hour. I couldn't believe it. But what he said is that a lot of the council members will, if they don't have anything to add, they'll just say, yeah, I agree with that, and then move on. So I think we all have a little bit of need, or we just have this need to share too much, and I think it's fallen on deaf ears for one, but it's also, I think that's a lot of the length of our meetings. And especially when we're talking during the question, when we're not asking questions during the question period, that's definitely a waste of time for us as a group. And when we're talking back to the people, the public, when they're coming up, not only is it unfair and to them and against the Brown Act, but it too is a waste of time. And it eliminates our opportunity to discuss properly when it does come back to council.
Are you suggesting any edits to the protocols in order to more forcefully reflect that, or this is just general discussion?
Well, the 5-minute rule has been in there, and I think I heard Christy Cregan tried to do it at one point when she was mayor. And I agree with Scott, very few times do we go 5 minutes. But if we could be going more often 1 minute instead of 3 and 4, and limit how many times we go back and forth.
I mean, I like the idea of having it there as a visual. I think it also, though, it's not necessarily enforced.
Not for enforcement, yeah.
Right, but I think it is cool with the visual. I think that, so that Sue possibly doesn't have to manage it, if we can do the request to speak, and then when I click on the little podium, it just starts the 5 minutes. I don't know if it'll work like that, but that'll make it simple, but then you've
I'll
got
have
to
to
make
play
sure that
around
you're.
with the technology, but I'll figure it out.
You got to make sure we're using request to speak, and that's also, we've
Thing has
done.
not worked half the time, too.
It's true, but if we can use that, it does help me be able to run the meeting and try to keep it fair from who requests first. And if the timer just will start on it, then that'd be great. But we'll find out.
One of the things I'd been talking with Hillary at some staff meetings in the past has been trying to be more aggressive. This is a request to staff rather than directly on this side, but it goes to our meetings running long, is to try to be more aggressive about putting things on consent rather than having as much on the on the agenda. And be willing to err on the side of us pulling things off consent. If we pull them off, we pull them off, but err on, be okay with pushing things on to consent and say, well, we may be okay with, we may want to pull this off or not, and then let it err on the side of pulling off consent rather than having it on the agenda and then not being on consent. Because I think we may find that there's a good chunk of items that I've seen come by, a lot of contract stuff, that has been pretty uncontroversial or pretty banal, that I think could possibly just be on consent rather than being a topic for extended discussion and debate. Not everything, obviously, it's not like everything can be on consent, but I think there have been a good chunk of items that I've seen here and there over time. It's not a huge percentage, but it all adds up.
I can say, just because I'm in agenda review for the last, I guess, 3 years now, we definitely try to put everything that we can on consent and somewhat predict, okay, we know this is going to get pulled, so if we know, then probably not, because but I hear what you're saying. I know, though, I tell you, we do definitely try to put as much on consent as we can.
The reason is because, even we have stuff on consent, sometimes I'll have a question about consent, and I'll say, hey, I have a question on item umpteen on consent. Oh, that's the answer. The truck that we're buying is a who's what's it whatchamabob, and fine, okay, then moving on. We don't need to pull it, have a presentation, have a staff, because I can read the staff report when it comes out over the weekend, and then just get if my question couldn't be answered in time for the staff meeting, it can just be answered while on consent.
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily need to be pulled entirely for that.
So let's go back to the protocols. And so the way I look at the protocols, honestly, is, my first 7 years or so, really, I felt like, and we went through multiple members of council, ran pretty well. So I think our protocols are actually pretty good. It's really about adhering to the protocols. And are there a few things that we possibly want to change or add? Maybe. But I really see and have seen in time, these protocols actually work. It's about the people adhering to them and actually making them work. But let's hear if there's anything that that members of council would like to
Member
to
Bass,
change.
what about the lining up for public comment? Do you have thoughts on that?
It's something that definitely.
Just to make it more time efficient.
It can happen. I think that for certain items, when there's a lot of people, that's fine. I also think it's kind of nice for the members of the public when you greet them by name, when you do know their name. So I think that's dependent on the item, right? If you have a whole room of public comment, like, sure, go ahead and line up. But if it's only going to be a few public comments and
maybe
people are going to
that's-
stand up, then I think you judge that on the item.
Maybe, is that something?
I do believe, I know that Councilmember Jenkins has had his call to speak button up for at least 10 minutes.
I'm sorry.
So maybe we
Speaking
could,
of
maybe
that
we could
thing
use
never
those
working.
and practice.
Let's practice.
Speakers, sorry. Mr. Jenkins.
Just a couple, a few, I have a few things that I hope that we can get to. This thing about the public, I agree that we have to respect the right of the public to say what they have to say, and we hope that they do it in a respectful manner. And likewise, what we say to them, we self-reflect, is done respectfully. They have First Amendment rights, and we as council people have First Amendment rights, as I understand in looking at the cases in Supreme Court. What might help our meetings is we have agendized items. We have business before the council. And I would like to see when the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem are in meeting with the staff regarding the agenda, that there be a time certain so that public members don't sit out here for hours waiting to get to their item, and that we set a time certain that you have the ability to suggest, or not to suggest, but to say we're going to have a time certain, so that the public knows, particularly those people who are working every day, they have their regular real lives, and they have to work, and they'll know at 10 o'clock this matter will be on the agenda. So that's
No earlier than.
or yeah, some that there be some time certain, and that the mayor and the mayor pro tem, when they meet, can have that ability to set that. And of course, I think the mayor and mayor. Do you want me to go through all these, or just stop at that?
No, I'd like, yeah. let's
Okay.
go through 'em.
5-minute timer.
Okay, the order, the order, the mayor and mayor pro tem may change the order in which items are heard on the agenda to accommodate the convenience of the public. Again, it's for the convenience of the public, not me, not the staff, but it's for the convenience of the public. I also think that, that subcommittees of the city council shall have a defined role of each subcommittee appointed by the city council, so that it is clear to the council, subcommittee, staff, and public what is expected of the committee to do and what their powers and duties are. I've had this discussion with members of the council, a member of the council in the past. If you're going to be meeting and you're the council committee that meets on the agenda, you should have some defined ability to you're not just there to receive comment, or you can wait till the agenda and see that. And I'll just hold off. I've got a couple others, but those are so time certain, order of the agenda and the items, subcommittees of the council. There need to be defined roles. There's a finance committee. What does it do? It just goes in and listens. What is when the mayor pro tem meet with the city manager, city attorney? What is their role? Are they there just to listen? Or many cities, we might think about this, many cities define those roles, not to circumvent staff, but to define what the roles and relationships are. So I'll stop at that point. I have a couple more to add later.
Okay. Let's see, Mr. Roberts, or Mr. Robbins, you was next.
Yeah,
So- Yep, I got
hit the
you.
button there. I would agree with some of the time certain things. I know some of the other agencies here do that. And I have quite a few times gotten comments from members of the public who want to speak on a particular topic that's in the middle of the agenda, especially if it's a hot item, saying, when should I show up? And I'm like, well, the meeting starts at 9 a.m. and I have no idea.
Yeah.
Or, and that's very frustrating. So I would say that the challenge is if we do time certain for everything.
So that.
But that's the thing, is the time certain the purpose of that is so that the public knows when something happens. And
Right.
moving stuff around is the opposite of making it more convenient. If you have a time certain, then you don't have to think about moving
It's
these
just
around.
not, it's gonna be not
People know when to
earlier
show up.
then.
Correct.
And then we have to put the agenda together to try to make sure that we fill an hour so that we're not just sitting here waiting for the not earlier than then.
So that is,
Right, that's
that
the-
is, the challenge there is that if we were to do time certain for every agenda item, and I think the Board of Supervisors does that.
Just for public hearings and
Hang
things
on,
that are.
let me finish.
Yep.
If we do a time certain for every single item, then we can run into pacing problems where if we've moved through stuff faster, we have to slow down, which is the opposite of what we want.
So-
So what I would suggest in our protocols is that we allow discretion between the city manager and the mayor or whoever the agenda planning committee, whatever it is, to assign time certain by discretion to certain agenda items that are anticipated to have high public engagement. So that way you know when the bear thing
All
comes
right,
up.
so let's try
or
this.
the
You got
VHRs.
it out? What's next?
Are we,
We can quit explaining it. We got that. Now let's, what is the
All right.
next protocol you want to go?
I want to circle back to the electronic devices, but I want to do that later.
Well, no, let's try
Let's
to.
do it now?
If you guys can get out, so that way we just go through and we don't have to come back. So
Oh, okay. I've seen Keith, I've seen you use your phone to pull up AI information on topics here. Cody, I've seen you use your laptop at nearly every meeting for the last 8 years. And I use my phone to look stuff up and fact check things that staff says all the time. And I think our policy on electronic devices needs to come up to the 21st century.
I was going to agree. I actually often will have my city email up because
Yeah.
we get written public communications that aren't available immediately on. Yeah, so sometimes I like to use the written.
So I do think that the prohibition on messaging members of the public about city business and be it by any platform, electronic messaging or about city business during a meeting, that should stay prohibited. And I'm fine with that. I think that is good policy. But when people say, oh, there is no such battery power system that we can use as a battery generator, and I can look that up and say, oh, no, wait, here's some options. Or I want to look up what, type of cement paving there is, and I want to fact check something. And Keith, I can't remember what you used, one of the AIs to fact check, but it was something, and it was a few meetings ago.
And we've used it for maps.
and I use it for
think that
maps
we
all
need
the damn
direction
time.
from the city attorney
Because we're doing
on this,
something
though.
on something or other street, and I need to get my head
It does
around that.
say in that exact line item, city council members will not utilize the internet during city council meetings to receive information on items on the agenda that are not disclosed to the entire city council and the public.
Yeah, that's.
So,
that-
that's just part of your
We can be
protocols. If you want that
reading from our
stricken,
email.
I-
That
you
would
know.
be allowable.
Yeah, sure.
So I think that is broader or more restrictive than what the law is. So if council wants to pull that back, I would say, at a minimum, council should not be texting or communicating with each other.
For sure
Or anyone in the public about items on the agenda. And for public hearings, you should not be looking up anything that wasn't part of the record that's in front of you and in front of, because public hearings have due process rights attached to them. And so the parties involved would need to have access to the same information.
And just to be clear,
So-
public hearings are not all agenda items are public hearings. That's a specific type of agenda item having to do with individual appeals and things like that, rather than if we're having an agenda item about paving and I want to fact check something about what type of pavement it is.
Or a battery
or
for
battery or whatever,
electrification. Yeah.
So then we-
that's not a hearing.
So we can update the protocol, but keep the language that you just said, the legal language around not communicating with each other, not communicating with the public, and the public hearing part.
Correct. If you want to.
We shouldn't be sending or receiving text messages or emails.
Right.
Like, that needs to stay.
Not
Yeah,
from
and
the
if you
public.
want to
From the
draw it
public
back.
about
But I mean, like,
city business. Yeah.
I have a business, if an emergency happens and I get a text, that's a different thing, it's just, that's where I feel like it is a little too restrictive.
I agree.
So, okay,
And we can add that we should we should probably make sure to set our ringers to silent. I think that's only happened like twice though, ever.
Just do it.
Just do it.
All right, are you good?
I'm sure.
Okay.
That's for now.
Mr.
Unless
Roberts.
something comes up.
Yeah, I didn't want to attack anything specific at this moment, but I wanted to expound on what I said earlier, because I experienced this in my teams with my restaurants. When I sit down and I have management meetings, obviously I have a lot of experience as a restaurant manager, and when I bring a point forward, it's like, this is how we should fix this challenge. I usually add on what I've done in the past. You know, I did this here, 10 years ago we did this, and that's how we fix this problem. Well, eventually I got called out for talking too much, which was one thing, and I was just trying to explain why I brought this idea forward. Not that it was just hit me right then, but it's something I've done before, and that's why I suggest it again. But it turns out not only did I get viewed as somebody that was talking too much, but I lost their attention. So it was ineffective, and that's something we should be keeping in mind too as we talk too long and expound too much on something. You know, get the point out and be more effective at communicating.
Great message, very good. Ms. Horgan.
I just want to share final comments that I have on if we were going to add edits. I actually am going to be the one person that say I do think for number 2, we should be explicit in what that process is. In healthcare anyway, I feel like if there are new people and they don't know the process, there's delays associated with figuring out the process. So I like being explicit there. So I think adding that the remaining council members elect someone to run the meeting, I think we should just add that. Why not? I agree.
The only thing that would be fine, I think you just have to clarify that it's only in the absence
Only when
of
both,
the mayor.
yeah, when both are absent.
Because generally, if the mayor's here, they're just going to appoint, in recusals and that kind of thing.
I think I agree wholeheartedly with electronic communications. I think that asking staff, specifically the attorney, to edit that to be current with current time and policy and procedure, what's legally appropriate, I think that is necessary. In terms of what Ms. O'Hare said about titles, I would ask, since we do have the Chief Roberson here today, do you see that that's something that has been a concern, and would you like to see that in the protocols?
Which number is that? I'm sorry.
Number 2 of Rules of Conduct, which is section 2, page 4. It just says addressing members of public and staff and as Mr., Mrs., and Miss. But I am sensitive to the fact that sometimes there are titles that should be also explicitly outlined.
I'm not so
Okay.
hung up on titles.
Okay.
I do think it is part of the decorum, though.
Okay.
A lot of times, like for me, when the staff report, like Lieutenant Santel was up here, it'll say Lieutenant Santel, right? So that I'm usually reading it from the staff report. So that's how it, at least, but I'm not.
I
saying
agree.
we
I
shouldn't
wanted
put
to
it in
make
there.
sure we gave opportunity for input. And then for number 7, length of council comments, thank you. Ms. Blankenship has already added that feedback mechanism. I can already see that I've been speaking for half of my time, which actually I do think is helpful. And I think the only other item I had was about the speaker shall not present the same or substantially same items or arguments. I can see where editing that may not have any effect. I could see that as guidance. But in general, I think we could be better at enforcing or reminding. And so I'll just leave it at that. That's all I have.
Oh, did I not press the button?
Well, this is specifically, a speaker shall not present the same or substantially same items or arguments to the council repeatedly or be repetitious. I actually read this if somebody was coming to every single public communications and sharing the same thing over and over again. I see the issue with First Amendment and with Brown Act, and we allow everybody to bring their concerns to the community. I want more people to bring their concerns to this council. But so maybe rewriting that, I just, when I read it, it read confusing, and is this guidance, is this, or is this something that we are going to enforce or be authoritative over? So maybe that is something that should be discussed, number
Maybe
8.
clean it up, because we can't enforce, we can only remind or advise. There's no enforcement. That we'd be illegal trying to enforce it, correct? So maybe cleaning it up so it clarifies that kind of clarifies that.
Be direction to staff would, just to maybe look at that section and,
Yeah, I guess I would request council make a motion of all the changes you want, and it sounds like it probably is going to be extensive enough that it'll need to come back for adoption or approval at a future meeting.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Jenkins.
Turn on my mic. I just had a couple comments. So I've asked regarding time certain where the mayor and mayor pro tem, when meeting with staff, if they know of items that are of concern, interest, that they can have a time certain posted on the agenda so that people know when that matter. The order of items on the agenda, the mayor and mayor pro tem can change the order based to accommodate the public and the convenience of the public. That subcommittees of the council have a defined role, not some vague, well, I won't editorialize, that they should have a defined role so that it's clear to the council subcommittee members, the public, about what is expected at a committee. Having a committee just to listen is arguably, it is arguably a waste of time, in my view. And of course, placement of items on the agenda, that was an early one for me. I think that if this is the place where we debate, we can't debate privately, we can't debate publicly with other members, but this is the place where the people elect us to bring ideas, to have discussions. And I would like some examination of an ability of a council member to place an item once a year on the agenda, and if there's no second, that the council member would be responsible for doing all the background work and preparing the item for consideration. If the council decided it didn't want to do anything, then that matter would not be able to be brought back by the individual for a year. I've seen that work in one city that I worked in, but that's just something to think about. And the other thing, I'm not sure it's in this part, is I brought up before, transparency in local government is very important today, the public. We spend lots of money, millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. And I would hope that we have a warrant list on the agenda. Smaller cities in California, many do, most do, smaller cities, not large cities, that we have a warrant list. It's not that we have to approve it per se, but if there are questions or the questions of the public, that they have a right then to know where we're spending our money. And I'd like to see that. Anyway, that's my list, and for your consideration, I'll back off.
What list?
A warrant list.
Warrant?
A warrant list is we spend, there warrants paid, checks to be paid. We spend millions of dollars a year, and I'm sure we do it well. I have the highest faith in our finance department, but I think it's important that the public see where we spend our money. And if they want to ask questions, sometimes it's not always the most comfortable thing, but the comfortable thing should be that we can answer their questions. I just think it's a transparency thing in government, that this is their money, it's their community, it's their money. So how we spend our money specifically is important for at least them to know. Anyway, that's my comment.
So I'm just wondering, so there is a subcommittee section, and it does say, a defined purpose and term, and I'm wondering, do you want to try to add language to strengthen that? It almost seems like we need to, each subcommittee needs to be looked at.
Yes.
I don't know that we do. Do you want to add that in the protocol, or do we want to look at that as a kind of a different?
Well, I just wanted an opportunity to bring that up, that a subcommittee, particularly when the mayor pro tems meets with management on the proposed agenda, that there's some role that you play without interfering with administration, but if you know of things that you could have some input other than just listening. And if there's a finance committee, what does it do? What do two people on a finance committee do, or a budget committee? What do they do? I don't want the council interfering, quote, with the operation, but I think there should be an ability for them, or there should be a defined role that they play otherwise, I see no purpose in the committee. We could just have a discussion up here. And with respect, that is not alien in government, nor in council manager systems. It's not alien at all. Right. It's very common.
Okay. And then I guess the only other one I'm a little confused on was just the last one, the warrant. So is that, because we get like the CAFR report, that's the, annual financial, and which has a lot of that, but I'm just wondering, so we can.
We spend millions of dollars to many different to vendors, we spend to consultants, we spend to special counsels, we spend to advisors, and we don't make the award to that firm, but we don't necessarily, if it's within the spending limits, but it would be good to see where our money's being spent. And it would not just good for us, because we trust everybody, but it's the transparency issue to the public to know where we're spending our money. Most of the time, there'd probably be very little comment at all, except the CAFRA and all that is a big picture. These are a smaller picture. And I think, again, transparency is very important, that people know where their money's being spent. And if they have a question, they can ask. If we have a question, we can ask. Probably there won't be a lot of questions, but again, it's a transparency. Larger cities don't do it.
No worries. I'm just trying to figure out how we fit it, or if we fit that in
agenda.
protocols, or add more.
I'm confused where it would fit on where we would give direction, except to say that there should be at least once a month a warrant list that's accompany the agenda to show where payments are being made with the taxpayers' money, so that the public can have an opportunity to ask questions, or we might if we do.
Okay.
Does that fit in this discussion?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Because I think,
another?
I'm not saying that we can't do that. I'm just wondering, I don't know that we do that in the protocols. I think maybe bring that back as like as a directive for finance probably, is where that, I don't know, I looked to Mr. Overrood.
We used to do that here. We used to do that, and we haven't done it in I don't know how many years. And I'm not saying, again, it's nothing meant negatively about our staff. It's nothing meant about our finance department. It's transparency. It's about transparency. That's all. That's where it is.
So I think, if I'm understanding correctly, Mr. Jenkins is asking for kind of a standing agenda item. I think we have an example of that recently, where Mr. Robbins requested the quarterly housing updates to be one standing agenda item. So that would be up to council if you wanted that to be something that we brought back on a regular basis that you determine.
Then maybe I'm
I
unclear on.
don't see it as a protocols item, but
I think more transparency is a good idea, but I wonder if that's a whole conversation about what that would look like. Is it something posted to the community? Is it something that has to be reviewed in our meeting, or just something that gets posted monthly? I'd like to know a lot of things that are going on in our community. I'd like to see where the money's being spent, where the vehicles are on the road for public works, what's going on in the rec center in terms of new programming. Like, I think that type of transparency is definitely something that we all agree on is something that could be agendized, but I don't know if it fits in city protocols. That was my only question.
My question is, I just need to clarify, because my interpretation of what you were describing would be something more like a web page that shows all the checks that are outgoing, more or less. But that's not so much a standing agenda item as it is like something that staff sets up as a public information communication.
OpenGov does a really, if we wanted to invest in
there's
it,
a million ways
it's
to
very
do it, but I
Just an
wasn't clear.
investment.
But between the city manager and Councilman Jenkins, it sounded like I was unclear if the intention was to have a recurring agenda item where we review all the payments, or if it's just a web page that shows all the payments and just updated periodically.
The treasurer does a report on investments periodically. And it's on the agenda. You can ask questions if you wish. You know where the money's invested. Some people have quite an interest in that in our community. I think the treasurer does a fantastic job, by the way. So it would be something similar to that. It's on the agenda. It's just to receive. If there's questions, there's questions. If not, there's not. It's periodically. It's not. Doesn't have to be every meeting. It might be every month. Maybe it's every 2 months. Where's the money being spent? There's money being spent on all kinds of things, large expenditures of money, that it would be, I think, useful for us and for the public just to know that. So, again,
Yeah, no, I think you've got the support for sure on the transparency. I think
Okay.
though it'll come back as, because I think we have the discussion and figure out, do we want it coming back like that? Do we want to look at OpenGov, which is like a really cool portal that can go on our website that really gets into financial details for the public? Anyways, I think you have the support. Let's just bring it back because I don't think it fits in protocols.
I would hope that maybe we can define, so what comes back is what exactly what we're talking about, and maybe there's some options that could be set forth about how, in what way it comes back. That would be a point of discussion, and not just have a fait complete come back to us.
Okay, absolutely. Mr. Roberts.
Where did my
Oh,
thing go?
We are going to take a break and we will come back at 12:05, or no, excuse me, 1:05. All right, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting back to order. We are still in new business and a discussion on our protocols. So let's see, Mr. Robbins, your name is up. Is there anything
I think
else?
Keith was still going.
Keith.
Right?
You-
Okay. So we have in the protocols like a whole thing about, language for the land acknowledgement. So I would suggest we have something similar about language for recommendations for public engagement, requests for decorum in public engagement, and make that part of the introduction spiel that we do for the meeting. I've been told, by the way, that Yiddish is not as common up here. So spiel means the talky part. So it could be something to the effect of like the public is asked to avoid repetitive comments and to say that this is so as to give time for others who wish to speak and bring their voices forward, or out of courtesy to everyone else, to make sure there's time for everyone to participate. The public is asked to avoid unnecessarily repetitive comments and to keep their comments concise, Yeah, and to talk about the public is reminded that speaking in the gallery, discussions in the gallery are not allowed. Okay. Please exit the gallery if you wish to have a conversation, et cetera. Come up with some language like that is couched particularly in the basis of, because the reality is, long repetitive comments also hurt other people who want to talk, who don't have a repetitive thing to say. Mm-hmm. It's a disservice to other members of the public, not just to our patients. It's also the people who have something that they want to say that are waiting and waiting and waiting for an hour to make a comment. The other thing was, this is a topic I had brought up with Joe a couple times, but got a very tepid feedback, but I wanted to bring it up here, which was we currently get staff reports. We get the agendas with the staff reports on Thursdays when the agenda comes out. Thursday night, late afternoon, Thursday, or in the evening on Thursday. That gives us Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then we have staff meeting on Monday. And that's our first opportunity often to ask questions, but then the meeting itself is often a few hours after that. Like if we're meeting at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock with staff, then the agenda items, the meeting is, at 9 o'clock the next day, which can give very little time for us to read all the material, formulate questions, bring those questions to staff, and then gives even less time for staff to respond to those questions. I always tried to do that with Joe and continuing, to bring items that I want to bring up at meeting, and I usually will say, I'm going to ask about XYZ topic make sure so-and-so presenter is aware and has a heads up. That's sort of been my personal ethos, is like, I want to be the opposite of like surprise questions. I want to telegraph every question I have ahead of time. But sometimes it's very little time, and it's very little time for us to read the material.
So what are you asking?
So my suggestion, thank you. My suggestion is that we phase this out, and over time, we move to getting staff reports on Tuesdays, and then having the meetings with staff on Thursdays, and then the meeting is the following Tuesday. So that gives us a full week, or a week less a day with the agenda, and it gives us time, a fair bit of time, to go back and forth to get questions resolved ahead of the meeting. And if we have more time to do back and forth questions, maybe it'll make the meetings a bit more efficient, especially if we can get some of those answers ahead of time.
So I would just ask staff, I mean, I know with your workload and how much the time, because I know you're kind of, from the city manager's perspective, is waiting on staff reports from department heads, and then they need time to review it. And then we have to have an agenda review to set the agenda. And then it takes a minute for Sue to publish that after that has been made. So there's quite a process that takes place. And I just would ask staff on workload how that would work. And but I hear your concern, but let's ask our staff.
Sure. So I'll let the city clerk weigh in as well, because a lot of the process on publishing falls on her staff. But with respect to preparing staff reports and getting things prepared, we would just change the calendar so that the deadline is sooner for staff to have those prepared. They go through a multiple step review process before they're ready to be published. So probably the most impact that might have is that you might see it take a little bit longer to bring items back. You know, right now we have if council requests and gets a second for an agenda item, it won't come back sooner than 2 meetings. If the expectation is 2 meetings, like after the very next meeting, we would need to look at those staff report deadlines to make sure that that time frame would still work. If we're requiring staff to have reports prepared further ahead of the actual meeting date.
It's going from Thursday to Tuesday, so it's 2 full days earlier.
It would need to be like the staff reports would have to be to the city manager Monday morning. We would then need to be able to do an agenda review Monday afternoon.
Everything moves back
and then
2
it would
days.
come back Tuesday, but
Everything shifts back by 2 full
But
days.
here's the other thing and again, this would be the staff, but if you need, could you have a meeting on Friday, and then if you need the meeting Monday, would that, because like if you have more questions, then you're gonna, be able to get.
I'm not saying we have 2 staff meetings ahead of time. I'm saying we do the regular staff meeting that I think we all do them on Monday, less if there's like scheduling issues. But generally, I think the staff meetings are on Mondays, right, for most council members?
Most of them are, however, it can be
move
whatever
around.
works for that individual council member's calendar. I think just historically, most of them fell on Monday, and I didn't request to make any changes to the standing meetings. And
Yeah.
when Councilmember Horgan came on, we scheduled one that fits with her calendar.
Yeah, and so, schedule around as necessary individually. So it's not like it has to be on that day, but that would be the nominal day, and then adjust from there.
But if
the
you had
idea
your
is that
meeting
that
on
would.
Friday, would that not give you, because if you had your meeting Friday, you would have 1, 2, 3 full days before, and you'd have Monday if you had follow-up questions that came to you through the
Yeah,
weekend.
the only thing, right, is that doesn't give staff much more time to respond to questions. In other words, if I meet with staff on Thursday, they have at least all day Friday to respond to issues and questions, and all day Monday. If I meet with them on Friday, I'm not expecting staff to work over the weekends to answer my inane questions.
Well, could they not,
Sometimes they're inane, sometimes they're
could you
serious.
not move your meeting to Thursday afternoon in our current, because the
But the problem
agenda's
with
gonna be
meeting
out
my
and published.
meeting is the agenda would not have come out yet. Or if it did, it would have been out for 10 seconds. So that's the challenge. You have to move things back 2 days so that we have enough time to read and digest, then ask questions and give staff enough time to respond to our questions prior to meetings, or at least to have some dialogue. That could help slow some stuff down. My feeling also is,
To be fair, I feel like I want to
Okay.
chime in because I can't have meetings on Monday before our meeting because I have a pattern schedule at work and there's other than taking a day off, which I have been able to for this month because we have a lot going on. I would say that his suggestion, if staff felt like they could accommodate, which we haven't spoken to Ms. Blankenship yet, I would agree with it. I think that I might not be the only council member that has conflicts on Monday. And so having a little extra time to read the materials, having a little extra time to fit your weekly meeting, if staff feels it's reasonable, I think that that's a nice accommodation for city council members.
The other thing
and for the
is-
community who 1,000 pages is a lot to review.
Yeah. The other thing, by the way, is that I think, if I understand it correctly, at the moment, partially because we've been behind schedule in getting materials, there actually, as I understand it, at the moment, there is a backlog of like ready staff reports to have at meetings. Is that correct? Or is there, do we not have ready staff reports to move forward with? Because my next question was going to be about scheduling additional council meetings to catch up on unfinished homework, but that would require that there be staff reports that are ready to go, right? If the staff's not ready to have a meeting, then there's no point in us having a meeting to try to catch up on backlogged work. So that was going to be my next question for staff about that.
There are no staff reports that have already been prepared that are not going to your next meeting. But there are quite a few items that are on the pending list, and we have quite a few items already scheduled for August meetings that if the council wanted to have an additional special meeting, I could work with the staff to see which items could be brought forward at that time, but I don't have a specific
There's
list
not a
for you right
backlog of
now.
a few, some
They're
agenda
not
items.
already prepared. They would still need
Gotcha.
to be prepared.
Okay. So we're not running behind staff at the moment, I guess we're not running behind the staff's readiness to present at the moment.
Part of the process is just looking at the agenda management. So there may be items that staff could have brought, but we already have a significant number of items on that agenda. So we work together to find a meeting that we can plan to put that item on, and then the staff plans their staff report work accordingly.
So then I'll forego talking about adding meetings for staff report items that are ready to go, because it sounds like that's not actually a problem we're having, unfortunately. But in terms of pushing the agenda publication by moving that to the left 2 days, I think that would also, to Councilmember Horgan's point, is that would also provide more flexibility in when to have the staff meeting, because you have more days between when the report comes out and when the council meeting is. You have 6 full days in which to choose to have, well, not the weekends, I guess, but in which to choose to have staff meeting to cover that topic. You have more options. You could do it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, et cetera.
If there's support to do it, that's fine. I think, as we heard, we're probably not going to get the same, Ms. Blankenship, excuse me.
I mean, we put out an agenda deadline calendar. That's a deadline for staff. We can adjust all of those. So right now, we start 3 weeks before the meeting, getting the staff, and then everyone has to review it. The department head reviews it, I review it, Olga reviews it, Heather reviews it, Hillary reviews it, and there's back and forth. So we do need that 3-week window to get agenda items to you. And then my only concern with publishing on Tuesday is if we were to have a holiday on Monday, that would be our agenda review day would be on Monday afternoon. I'm not sure all of your schedule for the mayor and mayor pro tem on Monday evening to do agenda review. It can be moved. Sometimes there's holidays, so then it would push it to Friday.
And Tuesday is also our meeting day, so it pressures your department as well if you're in meetings all day.
That is true.
Tuesday'd be hard.
But generally, we're not, we wouldn't be having a meeting and publishing an agenda that same day.
sometimes.
So, yeah, but
Mr.
that
Roberts
is
was
a
up
good
next, but I know
point.
you have a question, so why don't you go? You want to ask the
Oh,
question?
I just have a comment. Actually, it reminds me of a comment that Councilmember Bruce Grego made. Yeah, as someone like many of you who work every day, have things to do in your own lives, personal lives, that he thought that if you had more time to review the agenda, it would provide more opportunity to answer questions, to have the agenda available and the reports, if they were available for the public to review and maybe get answers to questions rather than come to the meeting with questions. What it does is it backs the process up, as the city clerk and city manager has said, it backs it up. But once you get into a routine, it's essentially the same. It's the same
Maybe
thing.
a
does
Wednesday,
initially.
maybe a Wednesday publication, maybe we could try that and see how that goes. That might be a little easier for my staff to manage than having to try to do things Friday and
Tuesday when
Monday.
you have 'em.
Yeah, that's just an idea. But, if you want it Tuesday, we'll make it work somehow.
I
Wednesday is
agree.
a good compromise to it.
But
because,
that's
yeah,
not,
Tuesday
that's
with
not
the meeting
actually,
and,
that's not
Then-
part of the protocols.
Then do we
so.
want to
It's not
make
part of the
staff meetings
protocols.
for like Friday or
Okay.
something, then we can just,
All right, well.
Okay, I had,
Is that
just,
going to come back now? Is that idea?
is that going to come back
Well,
in
it's
the,
not part of the protocol, so yeah, we'll have to bring it back.
is it not
just-
part of the protocols?
No.
Yeah, that's what
Okay.
I thought.
If council wants to make it part of protocols, you can do that.
Okay,
It's
then.
not currently in there.
Okay.
All right, then that sounds like that's a place it can go.
So I agree with you.
All right, I wanted to ask a question of staff. I wanted to bring up a topic, but I'm not sure if it's for this agenda item or the next agenda item, but I wanted to ask before this agenda item was gone, which was, I wanted to ask about bringing up either a protocol or it's either would be a protocol item or a ethics item about having council members serving as council members concurrent while serving as like large organization lobbyists at the same time. Specifically, I'm talking about things like the Chamber of Commerce, the Realtors Association. These are organizations that have very broad lobbying interests that represent many, many, many different business interests. And I think that's incompatible with being a council member. Should that be something that I bring up for the ethics, or should I bring that up here for protocol?
Yeah, that sounds more like an ethics issue.
All right, then fine, I will hold off on that one. But I wanted to ask first.
You and I are on a similar.
And then the last thing I wanted to ask about, and I think this is a protocol thing, was at the last 4th of July parade, for the first time, I was told we are not allowed to toss candy to children because it's considered a risk item. So I would like to suggest that we simply accept the risk of tossing candy to children, including the city treasurer who would toss gelt, which, if you don't know, that's the Hanukkah candy, that's the chocolate coins, which is so freaking hilariously perfect for a treasurer to do.
So that item is not part of the protocols and probably is not part of this discussion, but I would say, I believe it was just that it couldn't be tossed across, only part of Highway 50 was closed, so that it was not to be tossed across 50 because it was encouraging people to run into the road.
I was told
So-
not to toss it to the side with
I
the
think
people that were on it.
handing it out is fine.
So we
Yes.
were allowed to toss it in the past, and that was what we were told. And the treasurer was told. So I would like to suggest that we simply say, you know what, we're willing to accept the risk.
That's not part
It's
of the
not
discussion for
protocols,
today,
yeah.
but I guess if
But
you
if we
want
can
to
make that-
request that to be
yeah.
brought back to council, you can do that.
Mr. Roberts. Unless you're done, yeah?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
plenty, I think.
Mr. Roberts.
No, I wanted to segue off of Mr. Robbins' comments earlier about the public and holding them more, in check and whatnot. And, part of the challenge, as I experienced when the one meeting that I ran, is, you don't want to start a confrontation. You're a little bit worried. If you don't have to, hopefully they stop any second now. And so you're in a position where we have to decide, do I go there and start the confrontation, or do I just take a different path for that time? But I also want to, and I think the verbiage that was suggested by Mr. Robbins was great. But I think that we should have similar verbiage for the council themselves. Because I think when someone is I know we've all sat back here thinking, is there a question in there? Is there a question in there? But from that chair there, you don't want to start that confrontation. You know, so I think there needs to be a more buy-in from us as a team that when that chair makes that comment, you know, it's not an insult. It's not, don't get mad. We haven't had this recently, but there's been a lot of examples in the past where they get upset for being told to stick to the protocols. And I think we need to have a little buy-in and maybe some verbiage at the front of each meeting to remind ourselves, you know, that, hey, we do have protocols. This chair is only, your job is to manage that protocol and not to get upset when we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to get in, we're involved. We don't want people to be afraid to think and ask questions and have comments. But when it is going in the wrong directions, we should all be open to politely accept that, you know, hey, oh yeah, oops, sorry, let me rephrase that or whatever. So I don't know if there's some verbiage available that we could add in somewhere, you know, just to, you know, more decorum amongst ourselves.
Yeah, agreed. Mr. Jenkins?
I don't think, along these lines, I don't think we have not had the experience more or less, but I think if people, whether it be us or not that we would do it, but or people in the public, if they are making disparaging racial, creed, religion, national origin, sex, sexual preference, I call it hate speech. I think that does not. They may have a right to, I guess, a right to do it in a generic sense, but that's not part of what common decency and decorum. And I certainly, they had in the city of Walnut Creek, I believe, a person who, because they were making very anti-Semitic remarks over the media, and they cut him off, that person who was going around from different places to do that. And I certainly would expect that we would do a similar thing if the party who makes those, or age for that matter. Not that I'm sensitive to that point, but that we should not ever tolerate that, whether it's in the audience by people speaking among themselves, or it's to us, or it's about other people in the community. That we should never tolerate that. If they want to write it up in the paper and get it published in a paper, a newspaper, that's for them to do. But this isn't the place for that. And I think it goes under the decorum issue that Mr. Roberts and others have talked about.
All right. Let's see, Ms. Horgan.
I am not fully prepared with a motion, but I think we're very close to a motion. So I was going to suggest just kind of, for me, the things that I'm fully prepared with, I will state, and then maybe if someone can elucidate the additional direction from council member, I guess both Robbins and Jenkins, because I know I didn't capture that. But in my motion would include, but I hope one of you will make the motion, adding to section 1, second as chair, who will serve if both are absent, adding after 3 land acknowledgement, some sort of protocol statement to be shared by the mayor. Moving on to 15, updating electronic communications and devices to fit current legal guidance and also current electronic climate and how we use our devices. And then also rules of conduct, section 2, number 7, length of council member comments, offering the 5-minute guidance on our agenda.
Sorry, what was I'm writing these down as you go. Go back one. I apologize. I'm
So,
just trying to capture them all.
Number
that way I can-
15 was the electronic communication. Yeah. Updating that per legal guidance and also
I'm
current.
sorry, you captured the numbers on all of them, which I was just capturing the topics. So
That's okay. That's okay.
Let me go back. Chain of succession was 1.2.
1.2 is the chair, and
Yep.
then number 3 is land acknowledgement. So number 4 would be protocol statement, would be inserted there. Then under rules of conduct, I was saying number 7, length of council member comments, adding an electronic reminder on our agenda in front of us of the 5 minutes so that we are all aware. And then I think that was as far as I gotten from the motion. So if you want to add the committees, subcommittees,
Well, there's a time certain.
And the time
That the
certain.
mayor pro tem, in meeting with the management team, can, as a courtesy to the public, set a time certain on the agenda that for items to be heard, so that the public's not waiting out here for hours and hours. And I think we already allow the order of items on the agenda. The mayor pro tem may change the order which items are heard on the agenda to accommodate the convenience of the public.
Notwithstanding the time certainties.
Notwithstanding, yeah, and again, we're not saying that all items are time certain, but there may be items of vast community interest that where time certains would be helpful.
I think Councilman Robbins was going to add the Wednesday.
I
Yeah.
noted that.
Okay.
So you
All right,
want to make a
let-
motion?
Yeah, I'm going to exclude the item numbers from the motion. I think that's just going to make it a little easier. If staff's okay with it, they can insert them where they go.
Yes.
But just to review then, and add, I will capture them all. We've got what I'm calling chain of succession, the chain of succession item, public participation protocol announcement, electronic devices update, electronic time indicator for council members, but not for enforcement. Reminder, yeah, indicate, let me say reminder, that's better. Time certain at discretion of agenda planning, or agenda planning committee. And then reorder discretion except for items that are marked time certain.
And then
Any more that I missed?
yeah, well, I did not mention that the repetitious or dilatory comments prohibited, that I thought the language in that could be updated.
Oh, yeah, let's do that well, we're gonna, what we can do is, maybe what I suggest is we delete that and move that, because we're gonna add a new
statement.
section that says, with the announcement that says that the mayor, in addition to the land acknowledgement, will provide direction to the public. And then that's where that goes, because that's meant as recommendations to the public, or request to the public, rather than rule, and we can delete that section. Okay, so I'm gonna say public participation announcement replacing existing prohibition.
Yeah, so these are recommendations to the public because they still have a right, a First Amendment right, if they
Yes,
wish to, but we're asking them to be courteous.
But we can ask them to be courteous to their
yes,
fellow members
yes.
of the public
Thank you.
by making sure they don't be too repetitious. Or, okay, all right, so,
That was easy.
I move, okay, hang with me here for a minute. It's gonna take me a second. Hang in there. I move to update the city council protocols to include a clause on chain of succession for when the mayor and mayor pro tem are both unavailable, and the mayor has been unavailable to designate a temporary mayor pro tem, that the remaining members of the council, if they have a quorum, shall vote amongst themselves to designate a temporary mayor pro tem. 2, that the mayor shall include public participation protocol request using the verbiage as discussed here in the meeting. The public is asked to be non-repetitive, or so as to give time to others, etc. Precise language to be determined by the mayor and city staff, including a request for politeness amongst the public, and that this request item will replace the current section on the prohibition of repetitiveness. 3, that the prohibition on electronic devices is eliminated and replaced with a simple prohibition on electronic communications during meetings about city business. That all forms of electronic communications are to be prohibited. All forms of electronic communication regarding city business are to be prohibited, but the general use of electronic devices are not prohibited except for the public hearing items for which receiving information outside of staff reports is prohibited for those specific types of items, but agenda items, but not all agenda items. That electronic time reminders be added to council member displays as per able by city staff within reasonable existing capability. And that these are to be used as reminders for speaking city council members, not as not as enforcement. 5, that staff provides agendas on the Wednesdays prior to the meeting. I think we can just leave it at that, and that staff meetings with council members can be scheduled at the council members' discretion and worked out with staff. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that the agenda planning committee, is it committee or what do you call it? The agenda review committee have the discretion to include no earlier than time certain, specifically no earlier than timing for agenda items anticipated to be of substantial public comment interest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That the mayor have the discretion to reorder agenda items so as to improve accessibility for public participation, except for items that had been marked time certain. The no earlier than time certain. That was a lot. Before we go to a request a second or vote, I just want to make sure staff was clear enough for staff. You captured all that, understood everything. No big questions. And did I miss anything before?
I feel like you got it all. Yeah. Did you see anything, Mr. Jenkins, or I think you got it all?
No, I think you've done a fine job, both council
That
members.
was quite the
I'll
move.
second that.
That was
All right.
quite the
Nice
motion
work,
construction.
Mr. Robbins.
We got a motion and a second, and we can vote. Oops.
Yeah,
Did you make a motion?
yeah. That whole thing, all of that was the motion.
Second. Oh, we already had a second.
You're like an hour behind now because that motion took so long.
You're all good with that?
Would you vote, please, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. City Clerk, thank you.
All right, that motion unanimously
appreciate the
carries.
prompt.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 3. This is going to be the local ethics policy update.
I have one
And Ms. Stroud.
item.
Ms. Blankenship, are you able to pull up the?
Yeah, I am. Hold on one second.
Pregunta.
Okay. I'm sorry. Here you go. I didn't even- Oh, jeez. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good afternoon, City Council and Mayor. Heather Stroud, City Attorney, and I'm pleased to present this item to you. It's been pending for a little while. It was initially requested by Councilmember Robbins about a year ago in March 2025, seconded by Councilmember Jenkins to bring this back, and a lot of water has gone under the bridge since then. So it's an important discussion and happy to have it. So, all right, let's dive in. Our current local ethics policy, the main portion of it was adopted by resolution in 1992. So that was quite some time ago. I know I was in high school then. It covers a lot of the same topics as the state law that's governed under the Political Reform Act regarding financial conflicts of interest,
Yeah, right.
gifts, and disclosure of confidential information, the 1090, Government Code 1090 type contracts, outside employment and the revolving door provisions and such. So it covers a lot of the same ground, but it has a little bit different rules in some places, and I'll go over that. It applies only to appointed employees, which would be myself and the city manager, and appointed officials, so for example, the Planning Commission and other boards and commissions, and is specific that it is guidelines only as to elected officials and non-appointed employees. So for city council, it's only guidelines. There's an enforcement process that has a hearing panel to determine if a violation exists, and if so, the matter is referred to city council for appropriate action. I'm not sure that's ever happened, not in my time here in the past 8 years or so, but maybe in the past that has been
Came
used.
close.
Right. What do you mean?
This past year, we came close to needing to activate some of these.
I don't think so. It only applies against city attorney, city manager, and boards and commissions.
But we can't, we wouldn't say if it wouldn't have applied to Tammy, and that we couldn't have said, we think there's a violation, and have that as part of the censure procedure?
No, in fact, there was a complaint
okay,
against
so
a
then-
council member in the past, and I looked at the rules and determined that it does not apply to council, and so that no hearing was necessary. So we have not come close to using it for council. There's a separate censure procedure for council if needed, but that's not part of this. So this is how it's different, in a nutshell, our ethics policy from the Political Reform Act under state law. So our ethics policy has a cumulative gift limit of $1,000. In the Political Reform Act, it's more strict, and it would be $630 from a single source. Under the city ethics policy, there's no exceptions for personal relationships for gifts. So like if you got a wedding gift from a friend, it would be subject to that gift limit. Under state law, there are exceptions for close personal relationships, romantic relationships and such. City ethics policy has an exception for honoraria. For example, if someone was speaking at a conference and was given money to do so. However, honoraria are specifically not allowed under state law. Under the city ethics policy, there's a 6-month ban on accepting employment from a vendor or consultant or something that you've been in charge of overseeing I got that wrong. It's 6-month ban on coming before council or coming before the city if you leave the city and you're working for somebody else. And then in state law, it's a 1-year ban on coming before city council and representing someone from the outside if you've left the city, but only if you're being compensated. We have other pieces of local ethics policies. For example, our anti-nepotism policy that was adopted by resolution in 2010. And it states that city council cannot appoint a relative to employment or to a border commission. So again, that would apply to myself, my position as city attorney, city manager, and boards and commissions. We also updated that in the personnel rules that council adopted last year, and it addresses management of employees that are related to each other, including those that are related to council members. And our financial policy, also updated and approved by council last year, prohibits any employee or official from accepting a gift of any value from anyone seeking to do business with the city. So any value, cannot accept gifts. So what I would say about our current local ethics policy is there's 2 types of ethics codes that local jurisdictions have. One is a rules-based, and it's like, don't do this, don't do that. Ours is more like that. There can also be a values-based ethics policy adopted at the local level, which is more like what we do want, what kind of behavior do we want. So ours is rule-based, and that's why it tends to be duplicative of state law, and in some places conflicting, because as state law is updated, ours might become outdated. I would say, in my opinion, it's not as useful as having a a values-based local policy. And there is a very helpful guide to agencies like us that are thinking about making this update called Developing a Local Agency Ethics Guide, or Ethics Code, a process-oriented guide by the Institute for Local Government. And it's from 2002, so it's a little bit old, but it is got a lot of interesting stuff in it, and I would suggest that you take a look at it if you haven't already. So there are some local jurisdictions that have gone through what we're thinking of embarking on that I just wanted to provide as examples. Santa Ana updated their local ethics policy, and they identified core values of integrity and honesty, responsibility for protecting the public's interests, fairness and accountability, and respect for fellow officials, staff, and the public, and proper and efficient use of public resources. Their policy applies to the City Council and all members of boards, commissions, and committees. And it also includes enforcement provisions. Another example would be Santa Clara. It addresses values of ethics, professionalism, public service, fiscal responsibility, et cetera. And also it applies to elected and appointed officials, employees, and volunteers, and did not include any specific enforcement provisions. Carlsbad, which I'm familiar with because I was working there when they started to embark on this process, adopted a pretty comprehensive ethics update, and it requires council members to model civility, invite and respect public input, recognize that we're all on the same team in providing service to the community, promoting clear communication, be accountable, not misusing city-issued letterhead, displaying empathy, embracing diversity, promoting a fair and consistent process, being truthful, acting consistently with words, and complying with both the spirit and the letter of laws. Watsonville is another example, includes values of responsibility, fairness, respect, and honesty, and also applies to City Council and all of its appointed boards and commissions. So you can see there's a lot of variety, and there's usually a pretty involved process to come up with your local policy, and it's going to be based on council's values with input from the public. And each city might be a little bit different based on challenges that we've had and what our priorities are. So questions for council today?
Yes.
Yeah, what topics, if any, do you want to update your local ethics policy on? Do you want it to be rules-based or values-based, for example? Who would the policy apply to? Would it apply to only City Council? Would it apply to council and boards and commissions? Would it apply to council, boards and commissions, and appointed staff? Or would it apply to everybody, including employees? And third, and this is maybe the question that's most important to talk about, is what process do you desire to achieve this? Council could appoint a subcommittee of council to work on this with staff. You could set it for another council meeting to have a more public discussion. You could do a workshop to have more time dedicated just to this issue. And then the timing is part of that too. We have a lot of transition coming up with the city manager potentially and city attorney positions and 3 council seats up in November. So it might be a bit of an awkward time to embark on this. So I could see a case for maybe putting this off until next year, but that's going to be up to council. So with that, I'm available if you have any questions.
Question.
Great, thank you so much, Ms. Stroud. Yeah, Mr. Jenkins, go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. Very, very well done. Does the state, as a general law city, does the state set the minimum standard that we are supposed to apply? And if it does our current 1992 resolution, is it 1992, does it meet that standard?
All cities, including general law and charter cities, have to follow the state law on ethics, conflicts of interest, and such. Our 1992 resolution is more restrictive than state law in some ways
Okay.
and less restrictive in some ways. So I'd say, my practice and advice has been to follow whichever is more restrictive. So that's how we've dealt with it, but it is a good idea to update it so that it's consistent.
So just to follow up, Mr. Mayor, if I may. So your advice would be in those instances where state law is more restrictive, or the minimum is more restrictive, that we amend our ethics policy to conform to state law?
Well, you could do that if you want to keep a rules-based local ethics policy, or you could just totally rescind that, say we follow state law on the don'ts, and we want to move forward with a values-based.
Yeah, well, I was impressed with your Carlsbad example that you made, so thank you.
I can't really take credit for that because it was just starting before I left and I wasn't there for most of it, but I was interested to follow what they had
Thank
done
you.
and it was pretty comprehensive.
Ms. Horgan?
Again, just questions. Are generally these ethics policies are publicly published? Like we could see the Carlsbad, we could read the entirety of it. In general, they're publicly available, correct?
Correct. You can Google them and find them pretty easily because that's how I found them all.
Okay. And then one other question. When you were at Carlsbad and they were starting this process, did they have someone from the outside come and assist them with writing these ethics policy, or did they take what they had and rewrite it? Or I guess the third option would be to find something that's already available and then adopt it.
Yeah, I don't think they had outside help, at least not during the time I was there. The city attorney was working with a council subcommittee on that.
A subcommittee.
project.
Okay, thank you.
That might have changed after I left, but that was how it started out. And then I wouldn't recommend just adopting someone else's because we want to make sure council's having the conversation about what our values are, and that's an important part of the process.
Mr. Robbins, questions?
What is the perimeter of authority here for applying these ethics rules to members of the city council?
Well, they're similar to the protocols. They're council's own policy that you would be adopting, and you can decide what the enforcement method is. I would say, censure is probably what the enforcement would be against council members. Council can't remove each other as being, duly elected, but you can have censure as part of.
So we can say this is what our ethics are, and our authority is to censure, and that's largely the limit of our authority. But we can make this like explicit as violating these rules is a cause for censure, and that's something we can put in the rule in the.
I mean, I think it does. We have that censure right now
In the protocols, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's in the protocols, but not specific to the ethics
Not
policy.
okay, but we could use it for a violation of ethics currently.
Well, the current ethics policy doesn't apply to city council.
Oh, I see.
So that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
We could change it to say,
Right.
this applies to city council, and add or remove or edit the protocol. We could edit the ethics protocols and say they do apply to city council. Therefore, if you violate the ethics as a city council person, the remedy that exists for a city council person is a censure. Because we can't vote ourselves off the island,
Correct.
as
You
it
can
were.
vote yourself off, but.
You can
we
vote
can't
myself
vote
off,
you.
that's, yeah.
So, okay, I think we're done with questions. We'll go to public, oh, yes, questions. Yep.
Is my understanding correct that censure, of course, is a serious, and that it's a due process that before the council could censor someone, it's a due process matter that they have to go through. That's been historically my understanding, and where there's evidence and it's presented, and you have a right to I don't see any of us having to worry about that, but I was just curious as to
Yeah,
that.
no, that's right, and that's the process that's in our protocols currently, which I believe is consistent with due process rights. But yeah, there's no automatic censure. It would be a factual finding, and I would hope that part of the purpose of having a discussion about ethics is encouraging good behavior, and we never get to a censure.
Yeah, I think there was one, without going into a detail, that I heard about, that there's also that if someone thinks that there is an action taken that is illegal, that they have a right to report that illegal activity to the district attorney, and I think that happened maybe before your tenure in office with a sitting member of the council. Again, without going into details, but is that am I correct? So something happens.
I mean, if something is rising to the level of criminal, that obviously would be outside of our local ethics policy and would be more of a state or federal law issue.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Straub. We're going to go ahead and open this item up to public comment for anybody here in the room that would like to give public comment on the local ethics policy update. Mr. Gregorich. Nice.
Hello again, David Gregorich. Just a couple clarifying things. In state government, we also had Government Code 19990 that dealt with incompatible activities. I don't know if that's incorporated in with the city stuff. That's a government code section, applies to state government. Lots of times there's an equivalent provision in legislation for local governments. So that's a question if that's something in addition to the Political Reform Act, which is referenced in the staff report, is covered under here on the rules-based, there. And then, as regards to enforcement, there's certain things that would be enforced through the FPPC or through the Attorney General, Department of Justice court system. If you had, misconduct. So I think you got to have the rules-based thing. The value-based thing is an interesting opportunity to do some addition there. So sounds like the start of a process, could be an interesting, worthwhile endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grugich. And any other members? Nope. Seeing none, we'll go to Zoom.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and open up our public comment. First, we have Ms. O'Hare.
Hi, thank you. I think I first brought this to the council in 2024, and that was a result of me feeling like the use of the title South Lake Tahoe City Council appeared as if the person was speaking on behalf of the city, and I was surprised that it was allowed. I've worked in a lot of cities, and one of the jobs I had was enforcing the ethics code, and it's not allowed in most cities for a person to speak on behalf of the city or use the title in that way. So I brought this to you about 2 years ago. I have a lot of comments, but I can't make them all in 3 minutes. So I'm going to suggest that you rewrite and modernize this policy. It's outdated in a lot of areas. I've also learned through time that the terms need to be clear and enforceable. It's helpful if they mirror the Fair Political Practices Commission's terms. There are some things that this city probably feels like they may never need, but they've been needed in other cities and you just don't know. Like, for example, there's a section about awarding city contracts. I've seen an example, in other cities, these hearings are public, they're not confidential. And there have been smaller city contracts. Here's an example. Someone owned a business, sold it to their friend, and then started awarding smaller city contracts to that company. And that's something that there is not covered in this current policy. There isn't a way to fit that in here through these terms. But there are some things like that that I've personally worked with. I know the ways around it. Or through it, or how it could be better written. I'm willing to help or serve on a committee in any way. I have a lot of experience working with the terms, writing the terms, knowing what works and doesn't work. But I think for the most part, it really needs to focus on the duty of loyalty to the city, and that everyone should be included, including employees, volunteers, and elected officials. It's odd to me that this covers appointed officials, but not elected officials. So that would be my suggestion, that it's a discussion for another day, a larger discussion, but I'm willing to help in any way if you form a committee. Thank you.
Thank you. No additional public commenters, Mayor.
Great. All right, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. I just want to start out by saying I think it is really there is a point of how much transition we're going through with our city manager and city attorney, of course, now. I definitely want to see this updated. I think the value-based side of it is great and a great process, but it seems like it does need to go through a workshop. Let's get a public involved and actually, really work through that. And then at the same time, this, there was an interesting kind of, I think Ms. Stroud said we could possibly just scrap this rule ethic-based policy because a lot of it exists in state law. Is that Did I get that right as far as?
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure what the benefit is of duplicating all of the rules that are already in state law. Those are already enforceable by the FPPC and Attorney General, as one of the public commenters mentioned.
Right. So that makes a lot of sense to me too. So I don't know. I feel like with where we're at with staff and the transition we're going through, is this something that once we have a city manager and a city attorney in place, that we want to bring back to then create the workshop and the commission to do it? I mean, I don't think today we're going to try to get through this value-based, that's quite a process from what I'm seeing. So I'll leave it at that and then just hear from council. Mr. Jenkins is up first, excuse me.
I think it's very important. There are a lot of things in state law, and I think it's important for those that relate to ethics that it be in a document of our own. I think it just helps new incoming members of the council, I think members of staff. I think it helps the public to understand that. So while we do a lot of things that are redundant, but it's more explanatory. So I think, and I too don't think that we can address all these concerns today. I think getting public input, like what I think Ms. O'Hare was talking about, is, and you were talking about, Mr. Mayor, is good, having that public input so they can be a part of the process and feel like they're part of the process. Let them raise issues that they may see that we could address. And that is a process that will need more time than what we have today.
Great, Mr. Robbins.
My thinking on this is that I would like to have this done and in place prior to getting a new city manager or a new city attorney, primarily because I think it's good to have this as they come in, rather than have this be a job for them, because we're saying this is our expectation. And that may not be entirely achievable, but I think this should be a process that we're on our way to doing. I would like to see this be something that, we don't hand off to the next city manager, but and next city attorney, but that this is a process that we work out before then. That may be a tall order, but I think that's doable. I do also think that, I think I would prefer generally to see ethics codes be clear and specific. This is how contracting works. You may do this. It's a rules-based system rather than a general guidelines, because guidelines are inspecific inherently. We can say what our guidelines are, but then we should also have a set of rules. That was sort of my thinking. And I think I do agree that there's probably more in here than there's a lot that needs to be. I mean, literally, it is written in literal typewriter font. 92 era, typewriter printed up. Like it needs a refresh no matter what.
Bigger print.
Yeah, but I think that's a job that we should assign staff to go do and come back to us with like updates, but that we give guidance on what those updates should contain, at least at the top level.
We should never have anything duplicative of state law when you already have agencies tasked to enforce these things.
The reason I'm questionable about that is because state law enforcement may not take everything up, and we may want to issue a censure or disciplinary action for staff if they violate that, even if a DA declines to bother to prosecute because we think it's a violation of the ethics code, even if a DA decides not to prosecute something that's a violation of the law.
But instead of duplicating it, all you need to say is that we can censure a council member for violating state law. Sure. And then that would cover, and then we don't have to duplicate writing everything back through, and then because a lot of times it's really the FPPC you go to or the Attorney General, and there's channels of how it becomes enforced. And so I think generally that's the first way, the first direction we would go. And then, but I agree with you, adding in that part of the censure. Let's hear from other council members on this timing issue around, just so we can get through that real quick.
Before we move on, I just want to end with, the one thing I do want to suggest that we decide here today is to apply the ethics code to members of city council and say that, yes, we don't have the authority to vote people off the island, as it were, but it should apply, and that a violation of the ethics code is grounds for censure. And we should probably, I would like to suggest that we expand the ethics code to say that, things like that working for the city and working for a lobbyist at the same time is not ethical. Those are two separate things. One, I think it should apply to the council, and two, I think we should also add a provision to the ethics code that says that working for the city or on the city council while also receiving a paycheck from a lobbying organization is not ethical. So those are the two things I think we should add.
I think what we should talk about real quick is this issue around, do we want to wait for a city manager and city attorney? Because again, in my mind, I think having a workshop, going out to the public, and doing this, and I like the value-based thing. I'm not opposed to having some rules that maybe go beyond state law, but I do think the value-based I think it's a great guiding policy, right? You can still have rules, is how I see it. But where are you both on whether we wait?
I put in a request to speak. I'm trying to.
Well, I know you were, I'm just trying to, because if we are going to wait, then we don't need to spin our wheels on what we're going to change and what we're going to do. And if we are going to have a workshop, that's the time that those things are going to be decided, and then this is going to come back to us. So if we can make that decision, we maybe don't spin our wheels doing things twice.
Well, I wasn't going to spin my wheels. I was going to give some of my thoughts, and I think they answer that question. I agree with what has been said, that this is a foundational document and it's shouldn't be rushed. I think it's something that I personally am disappointed. I read everything that was supplied to me, but I wish I had looked at some of the other examples of what this looks like, because I would hope that there's some sort of values combined with California and federal guidelines or rules. I think that there's some sort of blend that needs to exist. I think it needs to apply to all. I think the community needs to be involved in putting it together. And so based on that, I think trying to get this done quickly in order to get it done before any sort of leadership transitions, I think that's not where I stand on this. I think it's something that should be intentional. I think it should involve values. What I get a little bit worried about when we talk about maybe an ad hoc or a smaller group being involved in this is that I want it to encompass all of as many people as we can, the values that they think are foundational to our community. And so as much as I think having a small committee do it makes the most sense, I would hope there would be input. And I would hope that they would also have access to a large number of these to look at them and see if there's something that resonates, something that we like, we don't like. And those are my thoughts. So I think this is something that should be very intentionally thought about and planned and not put together before we have transition.
I pretty much mirror that exactly. I think it's advantageous to get it done quickly, but I think it's too important to rush.
Great. And Mr. Robbins.
Yeah. So one of the items that came up here, I think that was mentioned was I think by one of the callers was that is an example, I think, of going beyond state law is businesses that were recently owned, by a member of council or city council getting contracts, and that's an example, and another one would be campaign finance limitations, although that's probably not ethics, but that's something that we have discretion to reduce the amount of local money in local politics. So, these are things that are beyond state law that I think are probably worth, state law increased the amount of money that can be spent in local elections, which is the opposite of what we ought to be doing here. We shouldn't be letting money dictate who has access to the public discourse. So there are plenty of places, I think, where, yes, we should, where state law is as a jumping off point, and we say we start with an incorporation of state law, look here for the list of these things, and then we go on and say that, that's a minimum, that's a floor, not a ceiling. Mm-hmm. There's plenty of reasons that that's not good enough. Giving contracts to friends is not inherently listed as sort of an unethical thing, because if you don't have a direct involvement in that, if it's indirect, if it's then that's a question. And I'm not clear on spouses. If it's a spouse's business, I think that counts, right? But if it's like, but
Be a financial conflict under,
but like if it's
State
a
law.
if it's a friend, then that's not a thing. You know, if it's a
I think some of the challenges is how do you define a friend in a small town? Like, everybody knows everybody, so how do you have an objective standard for who's a friend?
but this is an example of why state law is a minimum, not is a floor, not a ceiling. And I think we should be thinking along those terms. And I think we should also, I guess, campaign finance reform is probably an adjunct to this, but it's not directly in line with with like the ethics policy here in general. But it's something that I think is also worth considering, that this council, shortly before I came on the council, where was it when I got here, declined to review. You know, we have discretion to set lower campaign finance limits, contribution limits, and that was declined 4 years ago, roughly. And I think that's something we should reconsider.
All right, and so Mr. Jenkins.
I agree that this is not something that should be rushed, but I think the Councilmember Robbins says, let us begin. And let us begin the process of engagement on this issue. It's important. Let's involve the community. Let's get people who volunteer, who have experience in these matters, help us if they wish to do so. And I do think it would be desirable if we could finish it all before we have new leaders come in, but I don't think that's going to happen. But let us begin the process, and because I think it is important, and I think applying the matter to the city council, to the council members is right, and you know, you make rules that if you apply it to others, apply it to yourself.
Seems nice that the state legislature.
Yeah, except the state legislature is not an example of
why it's a floor, not a ceiling.
and all you have to read is what's been going on in the state with that matter, and you know why. So I'd like to see us move forward in a thoughtful process as soon as possible, but not to rush it.
Okay. So could we create an ad hoc committee today that does this, or would that need to come back?
You can do that today if you would like to.
Okay.
I would just, my time here is pretty limited, and
Right.
so I'm not sure I have capacity to take on this
Right.
project, to even
What about
start
Dan?
it before I go. So yes, it might have to wait till there's an interim city attorney in place.
What about Dan?
I don't know. I mean, basically, I won't be here like in a month, so I don't have much time left. My focus right now is trying to get us through the remaining council meetings and get an interim city attorney in place. And Dan has a full plate as well, so we might need to wait till, July, when there's hopefully an interim in place to start this, but that's pretty soon. It's right around the corner.
Madam City Attorney, but if I may, Mr. Mayor, but we're delighted that you're going to remain in the community and as an informed, knowledgeable, and insightful person who may from time to time wish to offer your thoughts on matters that relate to our community.
Thank you for saying that.
Okay, so I mean, the ad hoc committee, if we go ahead and appoint that, then we can also put a solicitation out for members of the public that want to be a part of it, and then probably the ad hoc would be who could create a workshop, or how do you see that process?
Ad hoc would just be between council and staff. If
Okay.
you're going to have members of the public involved, that would be open to all of the public, not just specific members of the public. So you could do that if you wanted to, or you could just plan to have a full council meeting at a later date to talk about it.
Sounds like it could be a good use of the new rec center space to have a public meeting.
Well, I think if we appoint an ad hoc, and then, the ad hoc could basically, the public meeting could basically be the workshop.
As
The
they
ad
did
hoc
with the
hosts.
charter city discussion, that you
Yeah.
had people come in.
Exactly.
And the ad hoc itself had people come in and comment and brought it in. I think that's what you're talking
And
about.
then, basically the recommendations, or the draft recommendations that come out of ad hoc will come back to the entire council, at which time we can make changes or pass or do what we're going to do with. So, okay, let's see, who would like to be on the ad hoc?
I would, because
Thanks, Mr.
I
Bond.
brought this issue forward originally. So I'd like to be on that.
Okay, so is there other
I would be
interested
interested.
I
parties?
think there should be, yeah.
Okay.
So Heather and I, how about that?
That's if the council's, is that okay? Make the motion.
I move that Councilwoman Heather Horgan and Councilmember Scott Robbins be assigned to the ad hoc committee on updates to the ethics code.
Second.
All right. Motion and a second, and we
Is
can
that
vote.
good enough for staff? Is that nice and clear? Thank you.
That motion unanimously carries.
All right. All right. With that, we are moving on, and this meeting is adjourned.
No, is APC not on the, I was going to add like 5 more things to the agenda.